she'll see, one of the things I like with this rating is that every agency you get to see exactly how you are perceived by business. And I think that's a question, because it comes up often in conversations. How can you be an honest taxpayer if it's so hard to pay your taxes, the process? So I think this is a fair question to give Kim Henares. And in fact, for the customs, we might as well have the customs commissioner as well. Because, I mean, you see the ratings, they see the ratings, they're very public, very transparent. And I think they ought to be fielding these types of questions and answering back not only to the business community, but to the public at large.
Kim Henares is coming this afternoon, so you can throw that back at her. You can save it for her. Things are looking good primarily because of Pinoy's strong commitment to eliminate corruption. How do we sustain the gains we've made when his term or your term ends? I see all the hands raised to answer. Anyone have any idea? Governor Secretary Singson, do you have any? I'm sure you've talked about it in the cabinet. Ways to sustain what you've started.
Well, what's important is that the procedures, the policies are kept in place. Like in DPWH, I think if we're able to put in place the correct procedures, it's not going to be easy to take them out, especially if you have the general public behind those policies. I think that's the best way to ensure that good governance will continue. Get the people behind you.
Transparency. A question? Yeah, Bill.
Well,
Steve.
I would just, we had an incident, an instance when a mayorship of a town changed hands, Iligan City, from Frank Quijano to Lawrence Cruz. And in that instance, it was the Iligan Chamber of Commerce who went to the new mayor and said, we have this transparent, accountable governance program that we think is worthwhile, let's continue it. So it was somebody from the outside, the private sector, basically asserting that this is good for the city, this is good for business, let's keep doing it.
Maria, I'm happy the question's been asked. This is my third forum in 2 days on the topic of governance and the economy. And it's the third or fourth time the questions come up. It has come up in every forum. Yesterday, the economic managers briefing, in the afternoon with the Asia Society meeting, and here today. So it's a question that's obviously in everybody's minds, and I think it's a good question to keep on asking. The answer has been that, as Secretary Singson said, make sure the policies remain by embedding them so deep that and making sure they're successful, so that it becomes absolutely crazy to try to reverse the changes. So we have to work double time to make sure all these reforms are so deeply embedded. And I think the other response I liked is from Governor Sai Tatanco yesterday at the briefing. He said, good governance cannot be left to good government alone. It's a collective responsibility of people. And I think we cannot, we're being led, I think, properly by a good government, but obviously, as I think Secretary Singson said, stakeholder engagement and participation is critical to keep the reforms going.
Fantastic. A question for Secretary Singson. You mentioned a little bit about this, but do you have a program for fighting collusion between DPWH personnel, contractors, and their benefactors?
Yeah, as I mentioned, just by taking out the letter of intent. Then our people don't even know who will come into the bidding table on the day itself. Neither do the other contractors know who the competition will be. So to me, that's a move in the right direction. But to me, the ultimate objective is to go to electronic bidding. Then you just submit your bids through electronically. Everything is downloadable. The program of work is there, the scope of work is there. You just download everything, submit your bid on a particular date electronically. So we're putting all of our regions online.
So will that also be open to the public?
Of course.
So that's
course.
open?
Yes.
Fantastic. What would you suggest we do if a government office does not honor its signed contract on payment terms? This sounds like a gentleman with a problem. As you know, it's very expensive to fight government in court, much less win a case against government. What recourse do you have? Yes, Secretary Singson.
I'm still paying like 6 billion in back payments for right-of-way that date back as early as 1976, 79. Okay? So, and we've been pushing DBM that it's a government obligation that we should be honoring. By the way, there's also an interest charge of 12% mandated by courts for all of these overdue right-of-way payments. So it's not cheap keeping them. So I'd rather pay them off as soon as possible. So the answer is yes, we know that there's still a lot of backlog that we have to pay as government, but we've been paying, and we're paying much faster than in the past.
This is for Dr. Mangajas. I believe strongly, there is a name. I believe strongly in scientific surveys like those of SWS, but how do we discount compounding variables of different time periods so they can really be compatible? It's a question from Rafi Castillo.
You know, what we'll do is to put all the data for all the rounds on a CD and invite people to do their own analysis. The areas change a bit, you know, from time to time. That's also a matter of the funding, right? Metro Manila goes in and out. See, our philosophy is that the more data, the better, right? And we'll take what we can get. You know, the bigger the sample, the better. But we can't always have it the same areas all the time, the same, locations and the same sample sizes and so forth. And it's just a matter of the manpower, the analytical manpower, to go in there and say, well, this is what you showed, and these are the conclusions which can be drawn from them. We do not have a corruption analysis staff, you know, that dense that we can look into these. So we'll get the data out. That's the best way. We'll get the data out on CDs so that one can see every single case without identifying the companies. Of course, they're all anonymous like that.
Yes.
And invite researchers to walk into that.
Let me toss a question to you again. Corruption in public sector. Any different trends in Luzon, Visayas, and Mindanao? And that's from V. Payne of AmCham.
For that, we still have to do a lot more tabulations. We were doing them as late as Saturday, you know, just to get this, just to bring up to the last 20 interviews in. So we need a little more time to do that. No, it can't be done overnight either. But by the time we get to what we call the quote roadshow, because we have to show the people in Cebu and the people in Iloilo and Davao and so forth how they are doing, then we'll definitely have those for those areas.
This is an interesting question that also came in. Among the corruption that's never mentioned is allowing illegal logging. This corruption is so significant to our lives and destroys our environment that would take so much time to restore our repairs. What's being done about it?
There's a particular type which is not in the subject matter, and the agenda is framed together with the Makati Business Club and everybody else. It's a good idea for the future. Yeah. But it never had anything on logging in particular, or for that matter, mining.
Mining.
Anyway, the natural resources area in general is a good one for future. Yeah.
Several questions.
Maria,
Go ahead, Bill.
just to stress, in the preparation of questions, the process that Mahar goes through is a series of focus group discussions around the country with in the cities that are going to be covered by the survey. And a lot of the questions, he prepares the draft questions, but in the course of the focus group discussions, many questions are submitted. I participate in a lot of these focus group discussions. Actually, illegal logging has never been brought up, so maybe that's a good topic to bring up. It's never been brought up. None of the extractive industries, in fact, have ever been brought up by the participants in a focus group discussion So this is something that we ought to cover maybe in the future.
Interesting. We've seen increasing spikes.
Yeah.
This is, I think we have time for like one more question, but for Secretary Singson, for departments like DPWH, which are implementing everything right, how can the employees in DPWH be given performance incentives? How can you sustain good performance set against benchmarks? And then how can DPWH publish the performance ratings of contractors?
Well, first on the employees, the President already approved, no matter how crude it is, it's the first time for bonus schemes. Okay, so last year we did adopt, because from the day that I entered, I said, bonuses will no longer be given across the board. There is no way that I will accept laggards to receive the same amount as those who are performing. So we've stopped across the board bonuses. I give a minimum amount for everyone, but those who perform get much higher than the minimum. And that will be the policy moving forward. So we're now rating regional against all regional offices, and then we single out good performing district engineering offices, and we give them, last year, if I'm not mistaken, as much as 45,000 for all employees in that district, provided they receive a satisfactory rating. Unfortunately, in government, everyone gets a very satisfactory rating.
Culture.
So I have adopted a forced bell rating. There will always be 15% who would be good performers and 15% who will get 0. So I forced our managers to make those hard decisions. It cannot be everybody is above board, when in fact they're not above board.
Bill.
Just to reiterate what Secretary Singson was saying, this year there's a decision for the performance-based incentive system for all agencies. It is going to be on a forced rank system among the high performers and the average and so on and so forth. And I have suggested, and I think it's going to be adopted, there's a meeting on this tomorrow, is that this is where we need help of the private sector. The private sector cannot evaluate the employees directly, but I have suggested, and they have accepted, that the private sector help in setting the key result areas and key performance indicators. So the thresholds of performance should be set by the private sector. So we're trying to create a systematic way for setting these targets. And I know we work with DPWH, for instance, Performance Governance System. They use a balanced scorecard system to set the targets. So that's one way we're working with more agencies on that basis. So it's forced rank, and it goes into effect this year.
Fantastic. Gentlemen, can I ask you one question? And I guess it can be close to a closing. For you personally, why is fighting corruption important, and what makes this time any different from the last 25 years or 26 years since 1986? What makes this different? Let's start with Bill, since you're the last speaker. And you've gone through 3 conferences.
Why is it important? I mean,
For you, and you personally, I mean, you have been talking about this.
Yeah, I've seen the effect of corruption on not only tearing apart a social fabric, but in fact, it is stealing resources away from where they are needed. The savings that you see in government can be reallocated to other sectors that are in need, no? Education, health, shelter, so many other needs. So we've got to be able to reallocate it. And high levels of corruption, I think, have a direct impact on poverty. No? Now, why is it the best time? I think this is the best window we've seen in a long time to be able to act on this. And I think we have to take the opportunity to improve on the situation. In fact, we cannot afford to let the opportunity go. So I think this is the right time to do this.
Fantastic. Mahar, your closing statement.
Well, for me, it's just gratifying to be able to serve as a channel, for the views of the collective, for the collective itself to know what their own views are and to bring them back. This time around, the changes are so radically better that we must also be given a chance to enjoy it. I mean, we're in a position where sometimes it's good news, sometimes it's bad news, and of course, we feel bad as well if it's not good. Yeah? So when it's extremely favorable, we also would like to enjoy as well the pleasure of presenting those things to make up for the other times when we'll have to grin and bear it.
Steve.
For me, the motivation is that corruption hurts the poor the hardest. People like us in the room, we can live with it, right? It's a small amount. It happens irregularly. We're not really threatened by it, typically. But the poor person, the one who doesn't get the health services, the one who doesn't get the educational services, they're the ones who really need this to happen. And so for me, that's really the motivation. If we're talking about inclusive growth, if we're talking about reducing poverty in the face of economic growth, and the Philippines has not had a good record on that yet, we need to reduce corruption. As for why this is a good time, actually, there was an interesting point in the president's speech where he mentioned it's 3 years and 9 months until he steps down, but who's counting, right?
Yeah.
We all know that the president has no intention of staying. Okay, we know he wants to finish it this term, so that we have been given an opportunity for the next 3 years and 9 months to try to figure out what we can get done.
Bill.
Look, I'd echo what Bill number one and Mahar and Steve have said. I think that this is an important fight. It's important for the reasons we've heard here. Australia and other governments many of them have been in this room, or many of their representatives, see this as an administration which is serious about this matter. Fair dinkum, as we'd say in Australia. It wants to do something here, and therefore it's a time for us to get our shoulder to the wheel and help with that. And I think what we've seen today by way of data vindicates the idea that this is a time to be back in this fight.
Secretary Singh.
Yeah, Maria, from where I stand, I used to be with government, and I have left precisely because of what Mahar showed. From a negative to a positive. That's what makes the whole difference. From where I stand, you can imagine if we don't get the support of the person sitting in the office of the president, we will never get things right. But at the way the president has run the government, I'm sure if I do the right thing, he will be behind me, and no qualms about it. That's the whole difference. With the high rating of the Office of the President in terms of anti-corruption of more than 80 from a negative of 37, that makes a lot of difference.
But there is still a long way to go. I mean, your fight is daily.
We struggle, but we know we will get the support of the Office of the President.
Fantastic. We spoke about the Integrity Pledge, the Integrity Initiative Pledge, private sector help. If you or your company hasn't signed it yet, please look for it, the Integrity Pledge. Rappler is less than a year old. We signed. It's a tipping point approach, isn't it? Thank you very much, gentlemen, for your thoughts and your insights. A quick response from the man himself.
No, I just wanted to have a chance to give a quick reaction. I think I agree with all the statements that this is a very special time in our country where the fight against corruption is led by a president who has the credibility and the moral ascendancy to lead the fight. And I think it is very clear that the people are solidly behind him. But what, unfortunately, this survey also shows is that we have a lot of work to do in the private sector. that there is corruption in the private sector and we need to really seriously do something about it. Because even after 3 years from the last survey, there is no perceptible change in the way we conduct our business, in the way we still consider corruption a part of the way we do things. And I think we really have to double up our efforts. So it goes beyond just signing a pledge. It goes into really analyzing the way we do things and really committing ourselves to more serious efforts to change things around. We did say that our integrity initiative is the private sector response to what the government is doing. Now, the government is making headway, so we really need to do our part if this country is really going to move forward. That's really my main message. But secondly, Secretary Singson asked us if we could get together and put together an integrity pledge, perhaps that is designed in particular for the contractors. And I certainly would like to welcome that offer. We will sit down with you immediately to design a pledge that is very specific to the contractors, and we will look forward to your statement, your promise that you will ask contractors who wish to bid for DPWH projects in the future to be signatories to that integrity pledge. Now, finally, I just have one suggestion to Mahar Mangahas. If he wants to complete his NCR survey on the ratings of cabinet secretaries, maybe you can complete your survey on Secretary Singson right here. Because I think I am one of those who was quite disappointed to see the results for DPWH, quite honestly. One of the reasons we invited Secretary Singson and Secretary Abad is because we think that they are showing the way, that they are really doing concrete things to change things around. So, I was among those who was quite vocal in complaining about the slow pace of public works projects in the beginning. And it was explained that it does take a while to change things around. And I think we are seeing the results of that now, and we are seeing the accelerated pace of public works spending. So I think Secretary Singson definitely deserves more credit than the mediocre, poor ratings that they got. But it's already a significant improvement from where it came from before. But if you complete the survey here today, I'm sure he will shoot up in his ratings very, very, very well. So anyway, thank you very much to the panel, and thank you very much for all the comments and all of the insights that you gave us. Thank you.
Sorry, you talked about the private sector, right?
Yes.
You have the private sector in front of you. So
Yes.
what steps can they take?
Well,
you have them.
You know, this whole integrity initiative has many steps. Quite apart from signing the pledge, we've already designed a code of conduct. And that code of conduct has two phases. One is a universal code of conduct. The other one is an industry-specific code of conduct. Beyond that, we go into self-assessment to figure out where are we now and what are the weak points and what are the things we need to do to improve. And then from the self-assessment, we go into monitoring of our performance, and finally, an external assessment, some kind of a seal of good housekeeping, an effort from an external agency to monitor the performance of agencies. All of it really designed to put meat into the commitments that we're making. We're saying we don't just stop at signing a pledge because that's the easiest thing in the world to do. We really have to put meat into the pledge and really begin to change the way we do things. And that's really the steps that this whole integrity initiative is supposed to address. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you. Gentlemen, thank you so much. Before lunch, we will move forward one more speaker. Secretary Butch Abad is here and needs to go to a cabinet meeting right after. So before lunch, sorry, hold your grumbling stomachs a little bit longer. You do want to listen to Butch Abad and what he has been doing at DBM, the push for transparency. Secretary Butch Abad.